In Missouri and like the surrounding states, it's like 20 something percent of like the Forbes 300 largest private companies and then like 15% of public companies. But there's only 6% of venture backed companies in that area. Our focus is more of a volume game, and we've got a pretty ruthless sourcing strategy. We do about 300 outbounds on LinkedIn a week. Those are the kind of founders we're looking for. It's like the people I have to beg to give them my money.
Welcome to The Diligent Observer, where we help angel investors see what most miss. I'm your host, Andrew, and every week we explore what works, what doesn't, and why through conversations with experienced startup investors and operators. My guest today is Brett Calhoun, general partner at Redbud VC and a Forbes 30 under 30 honoree in venture capital. In this episode, we explore his ruthless sourcing strategy, his contrarian investment thesis focused on gritty founders, and the fascinating opportunity that he's identified in the Midwest, where 20% of Forbes' largest private companies exist, but only 6% of venture-backed startups come from. I hope you enjoy learning from Brett as much as I did. Brett, thanks for being with me today.
Thanks for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Likewise. Well, I got to start with my classic first question, and that is, what are you excited about right now?
I think it's just kind of pulling on the same thread of normally, which is just really being excited about all the entrepreneurs that we talk to and all the different backgrounds, regions, and applications for how they're using their intelligence to build stuff and, taking advantage of all the latest and greatest with AI. It's pretty exciting how fast, people can move these days with building stuff. I wouldn't say there's like one particular industry that's more exciting than another. I think they're all, we're more of a generalist investor, so we're kind of all over the place. We don't have, specific themes that we stick to. I think our perspective on that is, sure, we could spend 3 to 6 months diving into a theme, but we might be late to the party if we spend that much time trying to do research. Or it might, focus our time spending research on the wrong theme. And our focus is more of a volume game, and we've got a pretty ruthless sourcing strategy and have built up a strong investor and founder referral network. And so, we see stuff, this week we're talking to like a filtration company, to a biotech company using AI for scientists, to like boring construction, to, if you look at our portfolio, we've got, some very off the, beaten path investments. We got CRISPR gene editing mosquito company. We've got a robotic wig company. And then we've done like, the traditional fintech or vertical SaaS. And like, I think that's where a lot of people are playing these days. But I think it's exciting how easy it is for a lot of people to build software companies now or tech companies, and enabling more than just people who've had the pedigree to build. Like, I think people who are still proving that pedigree, there's so much more opportunity for investing in those types of entrepreneurs.
So say more about your trigger mechanism. Like, how do you identify the through line? Like, what are you looking for? I'm always curious with more generalist investors, like what's the common thread or the thing that jumps out at you that makes you double click and really dig deeper with an opportunity?
So typically, like what a Redbud deal looks like is you've probably got somebody who spent a decade or two in an industry, lived a problem, and they got so tired of it that they decided to build a company to solve it. And, they've teamed up with, whether they're technical themselves or they teamed up with somebody who has the skill sets where they can go and build something. And then because they come from an industry, they have the street cred, they have the distribution network to go, get solid customer discovery. But because you spent time in the industry, you don't spend, 6 to 12 months beating your head against the wall trying to understand who the true customer is, the ins and outs of the problem. And you can just get to building and getting feedback. And those companies are really easy to invest in. And so the ones who, they don't really want to raise money, it's like there's like a breaking point where they need to, but they don't want to raise money until they feel comfortable with raising money, where it's like, we feel comfortable taking on and risking someone else's capital. So there's like a period of like resilience shown where it's like, we don't care about the crazy logos. I'm not trying to go raise money to go hire engineers to go build the thing for me. It's like, no, I'm going to go prove to myself that it's worth my time. And once I've done that, then I'm going to go raise money. So we look for that inflection point. And so we're constantly sourcing talent, not companies. And we're trying to find them where, we're either meeting at that inflection point or we're meeting at a point where they're, hopefully going to hit that inflection point, and we're able to track them over time and watch these founders. And so oftentimes, because it's a team that spent, decades in an industry, they've probably never built a company before. And so, they're still proving that founder pedigree. We don't care if you went to Harvard or Stanford or, worked at Google or whatever. Yeah, I think and this isn't the case for all of our deals, because we certainly have people with pedigree and they're amazing to invest in, of course. But I think oftentimes where we spend most time is entrepreneurs who are still proving their pedigree and showcase what, we like to call strengthened by struggle, and, have certain characteristics that would lead you to believe that this person would be a good operator, a good builder. Because of some of the operators we have on our team, we think that we can identify those people and underwrite them more efficiently than other fund managers can. So my partner has built a, top 25 YC company, didn't go to high school or college. It's looking for entrepreneurs who are, could have a similar path to what they've done. Everybody has a different journey, a different path. And so it's not all going to look the same. But there are some key characteristics, like I mentioned, resilience is really the main thing.
It's so fun hearing you talk about this because it feels like your whole thesis is just really thoughtfully counter positioned against the stereotypical West Coast, founder that has the pedigree and all the polish and all of that. That's kind of the character that we see in a lot of people's minds. And so I love the almost counter positioning strategy, focus on this grittiness and the struggle. Could you give maybe some practical examples of like some founders that you feel like characterize this really well, maybe that are part of your portfolio or that you've worked really closely with?
For sure. I mean, our portfolio is full of people that display these characteristics. A few, locally here, like you have some of the scrappiest people. There's a couple entrepreneurs I've known for like 4 years. And, when I first met them, I don't think they ever, thought about starting a company. They were doing pretty well in their career paths. And, one of them ended up working with a portfolio company of ours. And then, he got the itch to build something. And here we are a year later in his third idea. And he launched like in like mid-January. He was just like not like wanting any money, just like feedback on what they're building. 2 months after launching, they're selling into public schools, which is not an industry we typically spend a lot of time in. It's, they don't have big budgets. They don't really make quick decisions. And so in 2 months, he had like 50 schools signed up and they had like 300K in revenue. Raised zero money. They didn't really care if they raised money. And I, had to beg them that we could be their first investor. And here we are, what is it, 2 months after that. And, they've got 70 something schools and they just keep scaling and they've raised no additional capital. Those are the kind of founders I like to back. They've been friends for years. They're both data scientists and they're applying their data science skills to support public schools who have never had anybody ever give them the time of day to help them understand budgets. You have somebody who was a teacher for 20 years in English and now they're running, a $20 million budget. So they just went and talked to people and someone revealed a problem to them and they just kept pulling on that thread and built something. And that's one example. There's another one where, we had a team that we met, they'd raised 400-ish K and took them 18 months. They had a pivot. I think they lived like next to a homeless shelter.
Beautiful story.
And yeah, we meet them like right on the tipping point of like, how much runway do we have left? We got to raise a round. But like they had massive like contracts signed and we were able to, we were the first ones to commit to that round. And then they ended up they ended up getting like 4 times the commitments of what they wanted to raise, had to double the round size. They're just like some of the scrappiest founders I met. It is literally just, you can just go look at like there's one founder that we worked with for 9 months before he let us invest in his company. And just solo building, had a thesis around document intelligence, wanted to build tools for some like legacy industry to start with as a wedge to have a more horizontal platform. But we were able to plug him into, one of our LPs who had, He's an executive at a large title insurance company and built software for their teams in this title insurance company that became infectious across the organization. Just, personal funding this business. And finally, once he starts getting some traction, I'm the first person he calls and says, "Hey, I think I'll take your money now." And today we're still the only investor, and he's brought in the whole team, and they've got customers, and they'll start raising here a little bit. But like, those are the kind of founders we're looking for. It's like the people I have to beg to give them my money.
Mm.
Yeah. And then the most successful so far. So we have 31 companies in this fund. The Southeast has been the most successful, actually, which is kind of a weird stat. So we've got 2 outlier companies out of the 31. There's more that are performing really well, and some that are, it's just too soon to tell. But yeah, 2, Atlanta and Miami, that are absolutely crushing it right now. So I don't know if there's something in the Southeast, but
Some in the air these days.
yeah.
It's interesting, Brett. I'm seeing a theme even in the few companies that you mentioned around the value of this network that you all have built, this sourcing kind of ecosystem. It sounds like you've been really thoughtful about how you've built that over the last few years. You mentioned that in your intro. I wonder if you could unpack maybe a little bit more tactically, like how have you all built this network? Obviously, your founding team had something to do with that, and so maybe this dovetails into the origin story. But I'd love to just hear like how you built these networks that give you access to these kinds of opportunities where you have to beg to get on the cap table.
It's honestly just a lot of hustling. I am notorious for cold outreach. And so I've probably annoyed thousands of people. The origin story. So we started an accelerator fund 4 years ago called Scale Accelerator, and it was mid 2021. The 2 brothers from EquipmentShare wanted to start an incubator. They brought me in to build that. Probably like the worst market condition in history to start an accelerator fund. So much capital in the markets. Why does anybody go to an accelerator when VCs are pouring more money than ever? So your talent pool is diminished, and we're doing it in a place that like nobody's ever heard of, Columbia, Missouri. The EquipmentShare founders, they were in 2021 still, they had a unicorn startup, and no one really knew who they were. It was kind of boring industry, construction, not anything sexy. And so, I had to come up with some pretty scrappy ways to source talent. I started scraping the YC co-founder matching platform. Hopefully this is like burn me in the future, but we're pulling data from that platform and meeting on there was thousands of entrepreneurs on there. It was recently launched, and so you could filter it by like technical people with an idea. And so we were picking up people before they were like launching their companies because they were looking for like their counterpart. But like we were getting them into our network. And so like I was meeting these people before they were getting into the YC application process. And we did a few deals from that. And there was, some local talent, obviously, in Columbia. So that was this to start. It was like, how can we be really scrappy? How do I find talent for an accelerator fund and then sell them on the value that we're going to provide? So everything that we did started from like minimal resources. This is friends and family fund. We had like almost no resources for anything. It was just me, the only full-time person on the team. And the opportunity that we saw was that there wasn't like a national pre-seed brand in like the Heartland area, and that we have some interesting pieces to build that. Certainly investors here, but not a lot of traction at the pre-seed stage. And which is interesting too, if you think about a lot of the entrepreneurs that we invest in. So the coast is very like hyper like pedigree, like hyper indexing pedigree. And then, a lot of investors in the Midwest are, indexing more traction. We're in Missouri, it's the show me state, it's
Yep.
you have 20K a month in revenue. But there's like this opening where you have someone who's proving their pedigree. They don't have any traction. Maybe they're in the Midwest, maybe they're not. And so we saw an opportunity there. But the way that you find these people is literally just by like we do about 300 outbounds on LinkedIn a week. We do a few thousand a month on Twitter. And I've been doing that for like 5 years straight. So like my newsletter of 15,000 people is mostly operators, mostly entrepreneurs. We've done it on Twitter and LinkedIn, and the 2 are pretty separate networks. A lot of engineers don't respond on LinkedIn because they get just blasted by recruiters. And so a lot of times you got to meet them on Twitter. So in parallel, I grew both networks. You could go, I mean, they're pretty similar. So I've got about 19,000 on LinkedIn and about 18,000 on Twitter. And that's mostly founders.
So, so I want to back up and just like take me back to, it's 21, you're getting started with all of this. You've unlocked like, oh my God, we have the YC list. What's your pitch back then? Like walk me through if I was a founder, that you were reaching out to, what was the pitch then? And then like, how has that evolved to now?
The pitch then was, what was the pitch then? This was so long ago now. It was something in the vein of like, and it really hasn't changed much. The difference in the thesis is that the accelerator was to find entrepreneurs and help influence the outcomes of those entrepreneurs by basically taking the story from the equipment share founders and their insights and then like walking them through that play. The learning there was that you don't want to invest in people that you have to influence, nor do you want to like push your playbook onto somebody else because everybody's journey is different. And so you could kill somebody's startup path if you try to get them to do it the same way that you did.
Say more about that lesson. Like, how did that lesson crystallize for you? Is there a story here?
I wouldn't say there's one story. I would just say that the learning was that some of the things that you may have pitched somebody on or tried to help them with didn't quite work for them. And yeah, everybody has a unique journey and they have to, some things you have to figure out on yourself. Like there's like pros and cons with helping, like introducing somebody to customers, for example. It's like, I want to introduce you to customers, but at the pre-seed stage, it's almost kind of like, there's like a value I can pitch, but at the same time, it's like, well, you have to get your own customers too. You know what I mean? So the accelerator, the pitch was like, hey, we're going to put you through this cohort. We're going to bring in all these like really scrappy operators who built massive companies. We did all these different sessions and you're going to get support from like the equipment share founders. And we'll do like, weekly check-ins. We'll do, different talks on like building your company. You can ask questions and then you have like, 7 or 8 companies in each cohort that you can work with. The learning there was that no one gave a shit about that. The only thing that people cared about was, can you introduce me to investors? And can you introduce me to customers? Can you help me hire an engineer? It's all network effects. And then the second thing was, if you're investing in good people, they're never really going to call you. But if they do, it's going to be more targeted. It's going to be like, hey, my co-founder and I are fighting. Maybe I want to fire the CTO. Is he performing or am I just crazy? And then it's great to loop in, the equipment share founders who've gone through a lot of these things and they can walk somebody through a more calculated path for that. And so all of this like programming and cohort stuff and things that we try to put together just were not great, to be honest. It was really just the networking, like getting to be in the same room as other entrepreneurs. But like at that point, then you have to ask yourself, well, if that's the case, then how much is that value truly worth? And why are we taking so much equity as an accelerator fund? If our product to founders is capital and then, if they want our support, great. Doing it on a cohort basis or charging a lot of equity for it doesn't make sense. You're making it really hard for your customers to buy your product. And so those were all insights of like, yeah, we should not do this accelerator thing anymore. We need to change. We can build a brand here in the middle of the country. And there is something unique about what we're doing. And there's a different perspective. There's a different network, different values. There's an opportunity to tap into a lot of high net worth LP capital of operators who've built like traditional companies, built tech companies, who've never really been part of the venture capital asset class. And then to also build a financial product for them where you could say, hey, if you want to get into venture, you don't have to give your money to a fund manager, New York or SF. We get the same deal flow and maybe even better terms. We work our ass off and we build a brand here at home in Missouri. And so that was, the opportunity we saw was just like, there's a capital opportunity. There's like an asset opportunity for people to invest in. And then there's a different venture product that we can provide and be complementary on the cap table at the early stages. So, most of the founders that we're investing in, all the investors in the cap table are in San Francisco or New York. And, we bring some diversity to the cap table. You've got people who built a company who didn't go to high school or college, and we're in this place that most people haven't heard of called Columbia, Missouri. And it's just different and people like it. Our founders call us like their Midwest HQ. And a lot of the companies, like, there's all these like sleepy industries that haven't really had a ton of innovation because it was so hard to build products for them, so hard to get them, onboarded. But now with a lot of the AI solutions and how it's more than just like moving the needle by like 10%. It's like doubling the output of these companies. And so you have all these operators and companies here that are customers of those types of innovations. And there's a giant mismatch of like, I think the stat is there's in Missouri and like the surrounding states, it's like 20 something percent of like the Forbes 300 largest private companies and then like 15% of public companies. But there's only 6% of venture backed companies in that area. So there's this big mismatch of like innovation and like legacy businesses. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but like, yeah.
So timestamp for me on kind of when you guys had this realization, and then like maybe what your primary focus has been over the last couple of years, or since then. You've kind of moved away from this cohort based structure now to a full fledged kind of VC strategy. Talk me through like timestamp, and then what have been the main focal areas for you guys in recent history.
Yeah, we rebranded everything in June of 2023, I believe is the date. So we started in June of 2021. We changed in June of 2023, and we had raised a more formal fund at that point and had a different LP base. And now we're about to close the next fund, and things are going super well. So at this point, it's working. And with the next fund, we're just doubling down on what we did in fund one and continuing to take the lessons learned there and, refine our product as a venture capital fund. Yeah, we're in year 4, or I guess year 4 and change, going into year 5. A year from now will be year 5.
And if I understand correctly, doing some online research, seems like a pretty significant portion of your LP base is actually based there locally in the Missouri ecosystem.
Yep.
If that's correct, I wonder if you could kind of break down a little bit of like Brett's mind map of how that ecosystem is structured, who the big movers, shakers are. I'm from Texas, so I haven't spent a lot of time in Missouri, like probably many of our listeners. So I wonder if you could kind of like go a level deeper and walk me through the lay of the land locally.
There's a ton of operators here, a lot of people who build companies. I was just, having a conversation with somebody today who's from Springfield, Missouri, and how, there's this company called like DMP that like nobody talks about, but they're in like all of the Wells Fargos and it's worth like $1 billion. Or like Jack Henry, which is like one of the largest fintech companies, or the O'Reilly family in Springfield, or like John Morris, who started Bass Pro Shops and Big Cedar and is worth like tens of billions. And like, that's just Springfield, Missouri. Then you have Cape Girardeau. You've got like the person that started Rhodes Convenience Stores. You've got the guy that started like Lid's Hats, like Plaza Tire. This is a town of 35,000 people. You've got in St. Louis, it's like you have all these people like Sam Altman's from St. Louis, Jack Dorsey's from St. Louis, Jim McKelvey, who founded Square with Jack Dorsey. Like in Columbia, Missouri, you've got, a history of like the Walton family. Like Sam Walton grew up here, went to Mizzou. It's the wealthiest family in the world. You've got, Storage Mart. You've got the Kroenke family that owns like the Rams. They own more real estate than anybody. The largest barrel manufacturer in the country, Beyond Meat, Zapier guys. They all started here. Wade Foster still lives here. Obviously, Equipment Share now. You got this company called Patient. You've got like Midway, which is like all these companies that are like multi-$100 million private companies that no one talks about in Columbia, Missouri. Kansas City, I mean, is very similar, right? St. Louis is a lot of like more generational money, and then Kansas City is a lot more newer money. So you got a lot of healthcare folks, Cerner, Centene, the Kemper family with like C2FO and UMB Bank and KC. Like it's a lot. Like we're pulling in like multi 7-figure checks from like individual investors.
This is what's fascinating to me. Is like, not being from the area, right? It's just so easy to not think about that, to miss that, to overlook it. And I mean, this is crazy. The names, I feel like you could just keep going.
There is an absurd amount. One of the people on our team made a post the other day from a slide in our deck, just about like we have in our deck for fun too, just like a image about like why Columbia. And it's like, I don't know, it's our home, but also it's a pretty special place. Like there's all these like massive companies that are built here, and then all the network from like University of Missouri. So you've got like let me see, Learfield's another one that's like one of the largest like sports companies. They're still based right down the road. Other companies like Club Car Wash. I don't know. They're probably, I don't know how many. They're like multi-hundred locations now, and it's a car wash thing started in Columbia. It's just such like sleepy business. Like I had this entrepreneur reach out to me the other day that started like a fresh lemonade business. Never would have thought that this was like, it's like your like joke of like being an entrepreneur of like, oh, I started a lemonade stand. Reach out, has a fresh lemonade stand, and now they like take it to your home and your parties, and they're about to go like multi-state. And it's like, what? Like what? Like how do like where are these entrepreneurs coming from? Like it just keeps churning. Like Carfax was another company started here in Columbia. It's like the stuff that Veterans United Home Loans, it's the largest VA lender in the country. They've got 25% of the market. Like it's crazy. Columbia is a town of 130,000. So yeah.
I mean, I'm just like shocked, right? As you're walking through all these names, I recognize all these names, but I would never have said, "Oh yeah, they're from Columbia."
Yeah. Pretty
There's
cool.
no way. So, Brett, I want to kind of ask a little bit more about how you guys think about and how you interact with angel investors, what the angel community looks like locally.
Yeah, it's, the angel group here is a group of, great people who enjoy angel investing, enjoy supporting entrepreneurs. A lot of them are entrepreneurs themselves, and they get together as a group, and it's different than a fund, like that's more of an opportunity where you're going to make individual decisions about a company you want to support. It's a little bit harder to scale, obviously. With a fund, it's more of like you're paying us to go do that for you. So it's slightly more de-risked. I mean, from an angel, it's hard to have, because if you're an individual investor, starting out as an angel and you don't already have the network, it's like you got to figure out how to find the deals, and then you got to have the brand for like somebody to want to take your money and to take the allocation, and then to understand like what's happening in the markets, what is good, what is bad, where should I put my money, how many deals should I do a year, how do I get diversity in the portfolio. The great thing about being an angel investor is you could put money in one company that goes 100x, and then you could put money in 10 funds and not one of them goes to 10x. You know what I mean? Like it's more risk return. So you can certainly make more money being your own angel investor if you know what you're doing. And we love working with them, especially if there's an angel entrepreneur or an angel with a background in an industry that's very strategic and has like a network to support the entrepreneur that we're investing in. So I think, yeah, angel investors are very, very important for the venture industry in general. And if I was an angel investor and I had, which I technically, yeah, I've done some angel investments, but not including me, if I'm an angel investor, I would probably want to make some angel investments for fun or through, not quite altruism, but if you're at a place like Columbia, you might want to, support entrepreneurs from Columbia, even though it might not be the best opportunity, but like you want to support somebody who has a passion here locally. And you can do that. I can't do that because I'm a fiduciary of somebody else's capital. My goal is like, if I'm going to invest in somebody here, they have to be just as good as somebody somewhere else or another deal that I'm looking at. I'm not just going to invest in you because you're here. So as an angel, you have the flexibility to choose where your money goes. But then if you invest in a fund, you get exposure to somewhat, risk adjusted returns where there's a brand behind it. And if somebody does their job well, I mean, you can make 30% annualized returns. It's locked up for a while, but yeah. So I would do both if I was an angel investor. Because one side, do whatever I want. I can have fun. I can pick the directs I want to do. The fund, it's like, here's part of my allocation. I'll give it to a couple of different fund managers or one fund manager, whatever. And then you invest in 40 companies.
So, Brett, as you look forward, what are some of the things that are goals or specific objectives for you, for the fund, things that you're working towards? You guys have hustled and grown a lot over the last few years since getting started in this. Tell me what the future holds, what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, continuing to build our brand here, and we're getting ready to close this next fund. And, I think it's, continuing to grow the team and eventually become a lead investor ourselves where, we've been building a brand. We've been more collaborative. We don't really lead rounds, but I think filling into to lead shoes is kind of a natural progression and kind of becoming like the go-to like pre-seed brand in the middle of the country. So that's where I see things going, and things could, of course, change in the next few years from there. And as we keep refining our product, as of right now, I fully believe in the generalist approach with what we're doing and being in the middle of the country and, seeing a large swath of opportunities and then being able to pluck out what we believe are the best talent from that. And so it's hard to think that we'd ever deviate from being a generalist because we would never want to be like the best founder we ever thought we'd met, and then they're just not in a vertical that we invest in. I mean, like that would be horrible. So I don't think we'll ever change that approach, but yeah, I think we'll keep finding reasons why we are the fund that a founder would pick and why we would, as we start growing and becoming more competitive as a lead investor. So I have some pretty strong ambitions. Like this is like the long haul. We're trying to build a long-standing like premium venture capital brand, change how people think about venture in the middle of the country. So we've got a long way to go, but we've covered a lot of ground pretty fast.
Well, and you've certainly built a system to blast out. I'm still just reeling from the numbers that you're sending out every week. That's incredible.
We do a lot of calls, between my associate and I. We're hitting 1,500 first calls in a 12-month period. We're looking at a few thousand deals, and we try to be everywhere and see everything with a small team. And one of the things I do need to do is start tracking the stuff that we missed.
That's scary.
There's certainly a few of them, quite a few. So start learning from those, why did we not invest? But it's so hard to tell because the company may be tracking, let's just say that we didn't invest 2 years ago and they raised $15 million. I don't know, what we believed could become true, like that company could still fail. You know what I mean? Because our investment approach is, and we've talked to companies where there was a clear path of like, all right, well, this founder will clearly probably raise $100 million, but we don't, the company I think is going to implode. Because we don't really care like who's investing with us. We're not local investing. It's like we just want to invest in good people who are going to build sustainable businesses and make us a lot of money. Where there's literally funds set up that literally just invest with top tier investors. So like that's the approach. It's like that's great if you're trying to go schmooze like institutional LPs, but we have a different LP base, so we're not like forced to do that. I also think that's a uniqueness with us.
Well, Brett, what's the best way for our listeners to stay in touch with you, follow your work, get added to your 19,000 on LinkedIn?
Oh, just connect with me on LinkedIn or subscribe to our newsletter. Our website's redbud.vc. Our newsletter's on there. My email's b@rb.vc. Pretty easy to remember.
Fantastic. Well, Brett, this has been a blast. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward very much to our next conversation.
Awesome. Good to meet you as well. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Diligent Observer. I'm your host, Andrew, and if you're an angel investor looking for essential angel intel in 5 minutes every week, I think you'd enjoy my newsletter. I send my best stuff, interesting deals, and more straight to your inbox so you never miss a thing. Subscribe today at thediligentobserver.com.